Well, good afternoon. I don't think I'm going to be as fine as you were, Lieutenant, with the choice of words. I'm a politician, but I'm not the best in terms of choosing some of the words. And not only can I speak a little bit more about the reality of what's happened to our community with wind energy and solar energy. I've taken the time for the last 5 years to truly get an understanding of what energy is all about. So, first of all, I am a NIMBY. I also represent a county that did declare itself as a moratorium against wind production. And we have 4 large projects currently, approximately 1,000 megawatts of wind production in Haldimand County. And I'll put this in perspective. I'll go back. I was elected in 2010. And I thought that I was elected at that time because I was involved in quite a confrontation in our community with respect to our neighbors, Six Nations. And I was quite involved with that. And my thought was I was going to help facilitate and build the relationship between our community and Six Nations. Unbeknownst to myself, in the first 3 months, I was approached by the 3 or 4 wind companies that were already quite established in our community, and they were looking to gather some support from the municipality, and it was quite a challenge for me because as mayor, I had no idea that 222 turbines were going to be installed in the next 2 years in our community, which was quite astounding. And quite frankly, going through our political process locally, the idea of windmills and solar never came up in the conversation because neither of the politicians that were currently involved with the municipality, nor were the ones running at that time, had any idea what was going on in the county. So my friend said to me, be wary of the first 25 individuals that approach you when you get elected. The first 4 were the wind turbine companies. But to put it in perspective, I come from an economics background, a financial background, and I believe truly in partnerships, and I believe that partnerships can succeed. And so rather than take an obstinate approach, I met with these individuals, and my first step was to try to find how we can turn this into a positive, how we could make the opportunity exist for our community. And it was through some challenge, but certainly a lot of effort on behalf of the developers that were involved to come together in one room. And we brought 4 multinational companies, one being Samsung, which was quite a challenge, to come together and script a vibrancy community benefits agreement. And I believe that agreement is the template that's been used for the majority of the new agreements that exist out there today. And we were able to orchestrate close to $40 million over the 20-year FIT contract for our community. To put that in perspective, our community, $450,000 is 1% of our tax base. So $40 million is quite significant. And I'd like to say that was great, but I can tell you that from the perspective of the public, I was a traitor, I was a sellout. There were signs similar to what you saw here, but certainly a lot worse with my picture on it. And it was quite a challenge because I truly understood that the legislation and policy was implemented, that they were going to happen. And to put it bluntly, the train was coming through, and it was just a matter of whether we wanted to stay and get hit by it or whether we wanted to get on it. And we chose to get on it. So we signed the agreement. We worked through with the individual companies, and then once we formulated that agreement, we passed a moratorium to stop turbines from coming to the community. And I'll tell you why. The real concern for me was the lack of consideration and the lack of consultation with the municipality. I have a perfect world in the sense that I live right beside Six Nations. I live in Haldimand County, and not only did we get the turbines, but we were also the beneficiary of the coal plant closure in Nanticoke. So having those 3 perfect sort of storms come together, you can certainly put it in perspective, and understanding that our public at large was getting the information of what was happening in the energy sector from our friends at Six Nations, because they were involved in the consultation process and we weren't. Can you imagine how that would go over, and truly understand that the turbines were being planted in the lands that people were living on, and they were hearing about it from people that were 10, 15, 20 miles away. So I found some interesting information in here, but why I'm here today, I guess I'm here because I do believe there is an opportunity here, and I am encouraged by the group here wanting to look at how we can better engage the local public. But I think we really have to be honest with ourselves. And I pulled a couple things that were saying. The one thing that came up was 20% of the municipalities have declared moratoriums against windmill. But if you extrapolated that information and looked at it further, it's actually 80% of the population that actually is able to get capacity. And so there's a bigger number there that says a lot more than 20%. I truly believe that for us to move forward, we have to take a look at the data that's here. And I don't know if you've had a chance to read through here, but I want to take a quote out of this because I think it's truly important. In this draft policy brief, the second bullet, despite a stated goal of streamlining renewable energy development, the Green Energy and Green Economy Act has not substantially reduced development timelines, and frequent changes in the Act's implementation has been a source of uncertainty for project proponents. I would ask you as the crowd, I would ask the public, why? Why is that? And I think that if we can drill down to that, we can truly appreciate that. There's a chart here, table 2, and it rates the different comparative rankings of province of policy environment factors. Or I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. No, that is the right one. And 100% was the score for being number 1. Minus 100% was the score for not being high. So the rate paid for wind power to the companies, interestingly enough, in Alberta, they were minus 100%. In Ontario, they were positive 77%. So 77% of the companies were actually satisfied with the incentives they were given for the rate. You scroll down a little further, item number 12, coordination between all organizations involved in wind project procurement processes, environmental permits, local development permits, and grid connection. Oddly enough, in Alberta, 64% of the companies were much more satisfied, and in Ontario, we were a negative 33%. So there clearly is a correlation between the cost and the incentives that were applied and the local municipal support. I look further back here and I find this really interesting. How does your company rate the following factors when deciding whether to become active in wind power in a jurisdiction? Obviously, number 1, rate paid for wind power, but interestingly enough, out of a scale of 1 to 10, it only scored 3, the coordination between all organizations involved in the wind project, procurement process, environmental permits, and local development permits. It speaks loudly and says a lot. So if I can reflect on what I learned, and if I can leave you with what I think would be helpful, is there are 4, I believe, items that need to be considered when moving forward. The first one is education. I'm ashamed to admit that prior to 2010, I had no idea what our energy sector looked like. I had no idea how it functioned. In fact, I thought that the plant in Nanticoke was how the lights turned on in my house. How would I know that there was a difference between generation, transmission, and distribution? If I had no idea, and I certainly can't say that I'm the most intelligent person in the world, but I do have an economics degree at University of Ottawa. I would hope that says something. But if I had no idea, I'm sure that the majority of the public has no idea. And so we continue to, and I always use the analogy, drink the Kool-Aid at different conferences and sell the sell, but we're selling it to ourselves who already have the understanding. We're not getting it out to the public who truly need to appreciate and understand what it is that we have in terms of infrastructure. I heard the comments today about where we're going in 20 years and what we need to do and how we're establishing capacity, but truly people don't appreciate and understand that. The other issue is trust, and I've heard Lieutenant speak it, I've heard it say more than once, trust. And how can we have any initiative supported publicly if there's no trust? And there hasn't been trust, and we continue to not establish trust. We just had an LRP 1 program, and in the report it said that the adjacent landowners would be responsible or would have to support up to 75%. I believe 2 or 3 of the projects were accepted through the LRP process with less than the 75% support. How do you establish trust in a community if you don't follow the exact rules? How do you establish trust in a community if you've only consulted with one divisional group and not the community itself? Confidence. I believe that trust drives the confidence, or confidence stems from the trust. People have to understand and buy into a long-term plan. But how do you do that when you allow the political environment shape and curve that long-term plan? In my opinion, the real energy plan should be insulated from political interference. I don't believe that energy should be involved at Queen's Park. It's a fundamental need that we all have in this world, in this province, in this country. Why would we allow a short-term vision or mandate that's 4 years long drive what we're trying to do 20 and 30 years out? It's not possible. And we talk about sustainability. How can you be sustainable if price becomes the driving force? Lastly, public and host participation. As a community who have had energy and transmission corridors in our area for many, many years, the question I would ask is, why would we incent corporations to develop in Ontario rather than look after ourselves? Why would we find the need to have to inflate the rate to bring in a Samsung or bring in a foreign company to invest in this province? There has to be a reason, and I don't think we know the real answer, but for some reason the province felt in the FIT contract they really needed to incentivize these companies back then to bring them here. Rather than incentive the companies, if we want to move our society from one position to another, wouldn't it not make more sense to bring them people on site? Would it not make more sense to incent the people who are paying the rates to buy into the projects, to buy into green energy? Green energy is only sustainable so long as the price is sustainable. And today, green energy means too expensive. And that's the perception out there. And of course, that's been vindicated, or it's been supported by this report that says the companies are 77% satisfied with the price that they were given for FIT contracts. So public and host participation, I think that there's an attempt, but I do believe with education, trust, confidence, and getting into the public and having the public have some skin in the game, not just the communities that host it, but all of the public. And lastly, I would just respond to a couple of things that came up. Why the success in Chatham-Kent? I believe the real reason that Chatham-Kent was successful is because you look at the population density and the displacement of farms. They are the largest farm owners that we have in the province. So from one neighbor to the next is quite a distance. You don't have that density in many parts of the other areas of the province, which stems to why that Chatham-Kent seems to be a little bit more proactive and supportive of the idea. I think that was really it. I apologize for the passion maybe, but the energy, but I really think it's something that you need to hear. And if you haven't seen a farm or been out to actually be, I highly recommend to get out there. You want to hear from the people. You really do want to hear from the public. You'll get a perspective. Majority of people, especially in my community, will tell you, we don't have a yellow smog that goes across Lake Erie anymore because of the plant from Nanticoke. And they're happy with that. And they believe in green energy. They believe in the idea of where the province is heading. But the process was not established properly, and we really, truly need to do a better job of engaging our public. So I thank you for allowing me to be here.